Excellent, excellent. There you go. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Do it. All right. We'll call the Scituate School Committee meeting November 20th, 2023 to order at 6:03. All right, the Scituate School Committee is committed to providing an environment of respect during meetings. We ask all members to interact in a polite manner. Even when there is disagreement, we value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcomed and respected. We ask our committee members and all who participate to commit to these standards to support and respect our community. All right, we will begin with public comment. As always, anyone who would like to make a public comment, please try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes. State your name and address. Seeing no hands raised virtually, nobody in person wanting to make any comments tonight. Okay. Student report. You're ready for our student reps. David and Lisa, hello.
Hi.
Hello. We good? Okay, we're good. All right, well then. Hope everyone's doing well this evening. Let's get started. Last Saturday, November 11th, Shore held their craft fair in the Scituate High School gym. The following day, Sunday, November 12th, the Model United Nations Club returned from a 4-day conference in Montreal. After months of research and preparation, 44 Scituate students debated, negotiated, and tried to solve current and historical issues with over 1,300 students from the United States and Canada. As you might expect, this was very exhausting. My own sleep schedule was only just recovered. At the conference, 2 students claimed awards at closing ceremonies for their contributions to their Historical Crisis Committee about the Punic Wars. Congratulations to junior Quinn Corkins for being recognized as an outstanding delegate, and to sophomore Patrick McCarthy for being awarded the prestigious Violet Desmond Award for Advocacy. As a Model UN student myself, these are incredible achievements at a very competitive conference. So both these students deserve all the praise in the world. A big thanks also goes to Ms. Willinger, Ms. Mulvaney, Ms. Traers, and Mr. Kerman for supervising and organizing this trip. Your efforts do not go unnoticed. On Wednesday, November 15th, Principal Laranger honored the 62 seniors and their families who received the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship by providing a continental breakfast. Unfortunately, with wrestling season around the corner, I myself was unable to indulge, but I know that many students definitely did. The Drama Club fall performance of The Miracle Worker by William Gibson was performed on Friday, November 17th, and Saturday, November 18th. I actually saw it on Saturday, and my lord, what an amazing job the students and staff did. It was absolutely fantastic. On Friday, November 17th as well, Friday, November 17th, 18th, the guest speaker, Aaron Polensky, a former wrestler, spoke to Scituate High School's entire student body and staff on the importance of showing up each and every day. The message was powerful, and as a wrestler, I particularly resonated with the stories. Thank you, Mr. Polensky, for the words. A letter was emailed home from Principal Laranger to congratulate our 3 league championship teams, field hockey, girls cross country, and golf, and also to our cheerleading team for competing in the state championships. What incredible accomplishments. The SHS History Department and ELA teacher, Ms. Hall, partnered with the Scituate's VFW Post to help facilitate the VFW's annual Voices of Democracy speech competition. This year's theme was, what are the greatest attributes of our democracy? Over 70 students submitted speeches and 4 winners were chosen. Here are our 4 winners. They each received scholarships from both the Scituate VFW and Shore and will advance to the VFW state level competition. In first place was Jane Ryan. In second place was Leah Brennan. And in the third place tie were both Quinn DeCourcy and David Murphy. I guess I'll have to settle for third place. No, but in all seriousness, a massive congratulations to Jane for winning first place and to the rest of our winners. I tip my hat to you all. You guys did a fantastic job. Now, I'll let Louisa take over from here.
So for our sports update, on Wednesday, November 8th, girls soccer lost in the round of 16 of the state tournament to Notre Dame. And it was a tough game, and I was disappointed that we lost, but I'm really glad that we made it so far in the tournament. So on Saturday, November 11th, the boys and girls cross-country teams competed in states, and the girls finished 10th, which is a huge accomplishment. An interesting story from the day was that a Scituate senior named Kyle Norton lost his sneaker with 2.5 miles left to run and still finished the race, so that was awesome. On Sunday, November 12th, the cheerleading team competed at regionals and performed amazingly, coming in 6th place to move on to the state championship, which was yesterday at Worcester State. This was the first time they made it to state since 2008, and they finished 10th in the state, which is incredible. They now have an invitation to nationals in Florida. On Friday, November 10th, the football team played in the Elite Eight as the 7th seed against the number 2 seed Holliston. They played amazingly and pulled off a 27-24 win to advance to the Final Four, which was Friday, November 17th against Grafton at Mansfield High School. They had a tremendous victory there with a score of 20-10. And they will now be advancing to the state championship against Duxbury at Gillette Stadium on Friday, December 1st at 5:30 p.m. They'll also be playing their annual Thanksgiving game against Hingham away this Thursday at 10 a.m. Now for some news from the guidance department. Scituate High School had 744 students sign up for AP exams this year, and this is a record number, which is awesome to see. For comparison, the school administered 588 AP exams last year. As we've mentioned in the past, school counseling teamed up with Military, Educational, and Career Opportunities Group of Massachusetts to sponsor its second event this past Saturday. It went extremely well as representatives from the service academies, Mass Maritime, ROTC programs, the police and fire departments, military prep schools, and the U.S. Armed Services were on hand to share information on the life-changing educational and career opportunities available. For college applications, to date, the school counseling department has processed over 2,270 school documents for the seniors' applications, representing 384 different institutions. And that's all we have for updates, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thanks, anyone? Thank you so much. Awesome.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Okay, Principal Reardon with acceptance of gifts. And is Kathy Young coming? Come on up if you want. Optional,
gonna invite
no force, just an option.
You're
Completely
gonna stay
understand.
Okay.
All fine with us.
So thank you for having me tonight. I just would like to thank our generous donors, the VFW Scituate Post 3169 Women's Auxiliary. They provided patriotic rulers to all 3rd and 4th graders in Scituate. The rulers had the presidents, all the presidents, and their years of service on one side, and it had the Pledge of Allegiance on the other side. And they were very excited to have that gift, so thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yes. So I will take a motion to accept this generous gift.
Are you resting since you've not been here? Or you wanna give it a try?
You got replaced since you weren't here.
You didn't practice while you were away.
We managed without some.
I'll make a motion to approve the gifts donated to each grade 3 and 4 student from the Scituate Post 3169. Post 3169 Women's Auxiliary with great appreciation.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, celebrate student learning with Patrick Newton, Science Department Chair, and Heather Allen, Curriculum Coordinator.
think this is 2 meetings in a row for me. This is like some sort of record. As Alan is just finishing up some technical things.
I think Heidi can share our slide.
You'd think these science, technology, and engineering would have this figured out, but.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having us. I'm Heather Allen. I'm a STEM, pre-K to 5 STEM curriculum coordinator.
And Patrick Newton, Department Chair for Science, Tech, and Engineering for grades 6 through 12. So one of the things we're really hoping to get across to everybody this evening is our desire to foster this love of science and curiosity and explanation that I think we all have that led us to become science and engineering and technology educators. One of the things you've heard me say in the past is science is a verb. It's something we do. It's a practice. It's an ongoing process. And so as we see here, we've got chances for kids to practice, to do at all 3 grade level bands. Some really adorable little Jenkins kids out on a field trip, hands-on in the field. Some 6th grade students practicing or learning about how fossils form using plaster instead of mud. It's a little less messy, although not as less as you'd think. And some of our high school robotics students in a sort of mock competition. This is near the end of our spring semester last year, where they have built their robots, and each of these little pedestals you can see has a different point value, and they're trying to pick up all of the iced tea bottles. The science department was very heavily caffeinated that day, but we were able to have a lot of bottles for these little claw bots to pick up and move around.
And so to continue fostering that love of science, at the elementary school, we celebrated STEM Week, which is October 16th to the 20th this year. So at every elementary school, they had a visit from a different science program for a science assembly. And there's a picture of Wampatuck on the left, lots of fun, exciting things. And then another thing that we did to celebrate science during STEM Week was the virtual flying classroom activity for all grade levels.
And of course, we can't talk science without graphs, so here we are. As always, there's a lot of information on these. I think it's worth pointing out that the STE, or Science, Technology, and Engineering MCASs, are a little different structurally than they are for our ELA and math colleagues. Insofar as the 5th and 8th grade tests actually assess 3 years at a time. So the 5th grade test is actually a 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade test. The 8th grade test is actually a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade test. And despite the title saying 5 and 8, we did sneak the high school biology one on there also. So points off for labeling the graph wrong, but this gives you one sort of snapshot of how our students did at all 3 levels based on STE MCAS back in the spring.
And so this one will dig a little bit deeper into our 5th grade STE MCAS, and I just want to give a shout out to Jenkins, the one that is circled. They increased the number of students meeting or exceeding by 16% last year, which was awesome. We're really excited about that and how things are going there.
And one of our other major assessments that we can use to sort of gauge progress and student achievement are AP exams. And I felt like it was really worth pointing out the massive gains that we've seen in both chemistry and physics 1 over the last year. I know Assistant Superintendent Driscoll has called this to your attention before, but I really think it's noteworthy how massively improved our student scores, where you can see biology has done well all along, which is great, while also continuing to trend upward with massive gains in the other. And of course, we just added AP Environmental last year, school year 2023. So in future years, we can add a fourth line to this graph.
So what's next for Scituate in terms of science, technology, engineering? We, all K-5 classrooms received 2 engineering as elementary kits from the Museum of Science, one for computer science and one for engineering. Teachers had a virtual training in May for how to implement that program, and then some other teachers also received additional in-person training at our November PD Day. So we're excited to see those in action throughout the district this year. We have another round of flying classroom opportunities coming out. I think Julie Ward has shared those. And then we are going to participate in the Bridgewater State University Invention Convention, again, for our 5th graders. So those pictures on the right are Cushing students who participated last year. So we're hoping to get at least 1 or 2 groups from every elementary school participating this year. Great experience. Awesome opportunity for our 5th graders. So we're excited about that.
And middle and high schools continue to work to integrate new curricular resources that we've just adopted for this year. As I've been calling it, 6th through physics, because what is 11th and 12th grade gets a little fuzzy in our program of studies. Plus it just sounds better. We are working on our pilot of a pathway that allows students particularly passionate about environmental issues to kind of focus in on what we're calling environmental stewardship. We have, I want to say the number is 8 juniors and seniors right now that have kind of self-identified as being interested and willing to pilot for me and give me feedback, which is going great so far. And both Ms. Allen and I were fortunate enough to participate in 2 days worth of training with DESE 2 weeks ago on the new, what they're calling innovative assessment MCAS, which we are expecting our, will then be 5th and 8th grade students to participate in spring of 2026. This is a revamp of the test itself to be more aligned, honestly, with what I think our priorities and values in science education are now, which is to say more practice-driven, more application-driven, and they're really quite interesting little sample tests that we were able to participate in through that training.
Questions?
Questions from the committee on?
Sure, I've got a couple. I'll start with one elementary, one high school. So for the elementary, I agree that Cushing looks great, but I think Jenkins looks great. Cushing and Hatherley are a little bit more concerning. And so I was wondering if you feel like you have a plan, you feel like you have what you need, like kind of do you have a sense of what's going on in those 2 schools? I don't know if you want to pull the data back up, but it was, I think 51% of Cushing kids not meeting expectations last year. And Hatherley just had a big jump in kids in the morning category altogether. And I guess as part of that question, one of my concerns I've always had about elementary science is how much time do the kids actually get in science? And I know sometimes, like we're saying, this is an MCAS that measures 3 grades. And so I'd love to just have a better understanding of what kids' science experience is through K-5.
Sure. So at Hatherley this year, they have a 3rd, 5th grade class. So they're departmentalizing this year, which has been great for those students. So they have that time allocated in their schedule that won't be touched to get that science content. All 3 of the 4 elementary schools are departmentalized in 5th grade. So they get their core science instruction that's locked in a secure science block. And we're hoping to sort of expand that to all 4 elementary schools. And in terms of 3 to 5, we are working to make sure we're getting all classrooms using the hands-on material. So last year, we made sure every classroom was equipped that they had hands-on materials to actually teach hands-on science, as opposed to reading it in a textbook and watching simulations. So that's one thing that we're doing. And I'm visiting all 4 elementary schools between December and January to share the information that Patrick and I learned at our training, to sort of get them re-energized, teachers re-energized about science and making sure we're carving it into their day appropriately. And just for the Hatherley, when this is broken out by school, I was very hesitant to do this because the numbers are so small. So when you see that jump of 11%, we just need to think about it's just it could be a couple students. So think about that's 4. Thank you. I knew you would have it. Yeah, so that's 4 students.
Okay. And just as a follow-up, I know we have the STEM coordinator role that floats across the elementaries. I was wondering if you could just talk more about that role and how that operates, because I know that that's kind of tough having just one person that's, really solely focused on this, but across the 4 schools.
So we have a technology teacher who goes to all 4 elementary schools. She spends a day in every building and she teaches the engineering standards to 3rd and 4th graders. She's also new this year is she spends a day a week coaching our library paras on the digital literacy standards. So we're using her as sort of a coach for those teachers. So of course we would like 1 in every building. And I would love to put that in my budget. But for now, I think it's a good start. She's doing a really wonderful job ensuring those standards are taught for 3rd and 4th, and especially because 3rd and 4th, we're carving out that time for those students, and then in 5th, it's departmentalized. So we're really targeting to make sure we're hitting standards for
Okay, thanks.
Just a quick follow-up, you said 3 out of the 4 are departmentalized, and which ones are which ones not?
Cushing is not departmentalized.
But if I could actually speak to that. So the 5th grade team is actually departmentalizing at Cushing for science.
So each teacher teaches 1 unit of science, so they switch for that. So if I were the science teacher at Cushing, I know the rocks and minerals unit, so I teach that to all of the students. And so during the science block, I will teach it to 1 group of students and then the next round, if that makes sense. So that sense. Thank you.
Can I have some more? I was curious about the line graph, just of the chemistry, physics, and bio. So you mentioned the massive increases, and so I'm wondering, to what do you attest those increases?
I think there's been a couple of things. I think the most impactful based on qualitative feedback from the teachers has been the access to support and PD and resources through Mass Insight.
Okay.
Both, actually all 3 of those teachers, we had 2 teachers teaching AP chemistry last year, bought in, attended multiple meetings, conferences, spoke with folks outside of that time from Mass Insight that had made themselves available. And felt like it was a positive resource and experience for them.
Yeah, so can you remind me, so the Mass Insight was, because it seems like something happened bad in 2021 with chemistry, right? Yeah, I'm just saying, so I'm just saying that's maybe an anomaly, right? So it sounds like even from 2022 to 2023, there were still more gains to be had, even though they were already at the 20, and they were 2022 and 2023 both Mass Insight years?
Yes.
Okay, so something else is going on too, right? Or they're just getting better or using the resource more effectively?
Students do the Mass Insight too.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I can talk about Mass Insight. I get super excited about Mass Insight.
Yeah, I think it's great.
It's with students and teachers.
Okay.
Comprehensive, we started 2 summers ago.
Yes.
And it's free professional development through College Board professionals for our teachers. It is weekend PD for teachers on Saturday sessions, as well as training for students. It's those practice tests, and I want to emphasize that when our kids take the practice exams, people who are not Scituate teachers score those exams and the teachers get all that feedback back before we even get to the exams. It's so huge to even, I don't know, explain it in 2 seconds.
Somebody did, I mean, I remember when somebody came from.
Kathy Hall.
Came
Yep.
and talked to us about it, they even had somebody from Mass Insight
Oh,
who
yes,
came.
yes.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that there's even a great leap from 2022 to 2023, that's all.
Yeah.
As a quick follow-up to that, I was also wondering what the data looked like before 2021. Like, I'm assuming you skipped a little because of COVID weirdness, but you've been giving a lot of these for a number of years.
I did make a conscious decision to not include the COVID years because those tests were just so weird.
Yeah.
Particularly the 2020 test students actually took at home.
Yeah.
Because that was the year everything was completely shut down.
Yep.
But prior to that, like, I'm curious prior to that.
2019.
2019, 2018, 2017.
I absolutely have all that and would be more than happy to share that back history. Chemistry has been a struggle for Scituate High School for some time. As such, I'm very glad to see this progress and hope to continue to see even further progress, especially with the time allotment that we've now given AP Chemistry and Physics, as we added that lab block, if you recall from last year when we discussed that need. So I think we're gonna see even further improvement there going forward.
We looked at those numbers online.
I actually do have the 5-year score summary, if you want a quick, I just carry it with me.
I just think it's a little obvious.
It's just helpful because
Yeah.
I can't tell if
If
we're just
we're
going back
looking
to
at
where we were or if we are doing much better,
Biology,
you know.
going back to 5 years prior, it's 2.96, 2.95, 2.94, and then we jumped to 3.24 and 3.14 as average. So the past two have been much better for biology. For chemistry, 2.4, these are the averages, 2.47, 2.56, 1.58, 2.13, and the highest is 3.19. Shout out to those two teachers who taught that. What's the other course?
Physics 1.
Physics 1.
Who's giving you the score?
Physics 1, this is the highest that it has been in at least 5 years. 2.32, 2.37, 1.96, 1.71, and the highest it's been in 5 years, 2.7.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful just to kind of situate that a little bit more. And then it's interesting that you were talking about the value, one of the values it sounds like of Mass Insight is the external norming and scoring. And so that was actually one of my questions on science. My guess / assumption is that a lot of the curriculum is kind of homegrown. There's not like a science curriculum, right, that the whole high school uses. Like each teacher has their own because it's obviously different, chemistry to biology and all that. So I guess one of my questions related to that would be, do you have opportunities for normed assessments outside of AP and MCAS?
Not generally. And so yes, curriculum is collaboratively developed between myself and the teachers. It is consistent within a course, which is to say if a student is taking honors chemistry, it shouldn't matter which of 3 teachers, they should be having the same experience. But yes, that's not something we just purchase, right? I am not at this point aware of normed referenced assessments that are perfectly aligned to mass frameworks, other than MCAS, which obviously we use as we get data for that.
Thank you. That's what I thought. I was just curious because it was interesting that that seemed to be something that's helpful. And we talked about that a little bit with math and Millie too.
Right.
Thank you.
Just a quick question about grade 5 science MCAS. So just when looking at the Jenkins, celebrating the Jenkins work here, any feedback, what worked, what's sort of helped that group sort of to make those improvements that?
Yeah, good question. So last year, they shifted how they departmentalize. They have 3 classes in 5th grade. One teaches math, one is ELA, and then the other teacher does science and social studies. So it just swaps back and forth, but holding that space in their schedule for science and social studies. And I think it's a great model. It's working really well in there. Lisa Masterson, shout out to her, she works really hard, she's very talented, and she does a nice job of also tying those 2 subjects together. So last year, I remember she did a tea party lesson where she had students who they had to sneak the tea down. So they had to connect the science and the weights, and she really did a nice job of bridging those 2 content areas together. So I think that's what's working really well. I think that's the reason for the 16%.
Interesting, good, thank you.
I just have one follow-up on that. So just, sorry, I might have missed this. It sounds like the departmentalizing is happening in 5th grade, but prior to 5th grade, in all the other grades, the classroom teacher is making time for it, but it doesn't sound like it's integrated into the other subjects. It's like, it's still a standalone, right?
Sometimes. We do the best we
You
can
try
to
to-
integrate it into ELA.
Yeah.
Sometimes math, it's a little trickier when they're learning foundational skills at the elementary level. But a lot of time we'll integrate it into the ELA lessons. That's sort of the best place we found. But yes, for the most part, it's gonna be a standalone.
Thank you.
Just you're looking at the comparison again for Jenkins, obviously it looked like something was positive, but you're comparing the prior 5th grade class to the current 5th
Yeah.
grade, so it's not really the same students.
Nope, it's not.
So is there any correlation where their you wouldn't have this ELA and math MCAS improved as much as the science?
There wasn't
MCAS?
that big, if you look at Jenkins specifically, I didn't put all 3 together.
Yep.
But I know that there wasn't that big of a jump for math.
Okay.
I can't speak to it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, principal arranger, the sailing program update and AD Payne.
So, let me say how the program has worked in the past, and then we can discuss how it's gonna have to work moving forward. In the past, the docks, which are typically out in the harbor on a mooring, get pulled into the Jericho Street boat ramp, and they're secured to the dock there. Not in a proper method. So the docks, they bang together and it did cause damage. So the rec department is refurbishing a set of floats, but they're not gonna be able to be secured to the Jericho Street dock. They're gonna stay out in the harbor. So the original plan was to tender the sailors back and forth, but that would take so much time to get them back and forth, and you're not sure who's gonna race when, and we just have the one boat. So that realistically wasn't gonna work. So Scott did some research and came up with these dollies that the boats will sit on, and the kids can easily move the boats in and out of the water at Jericho Street, and that gives us a land-based area for the kids that are not sailing. And then we can actually store dollies in the corner parking lot right there, and we can secure them so that the boats would stay there, and then when our sailing season ends, they would just get sail out, and we put them in moorings out in the harbor. We will use the Scituate boat house as like our changing area and whatnot. They allow us to do that in there, and if we have inclement weather, the kids can go in there as well. So We met with Tom and Nick from, Nick Lombardo from the rec department, and we all think that this is a good idea and it will work. We spent a couple hours one afternoon over at where we store the boats to see, because I actually didn't know where they were. They were over at the Maritime Center, in that building in the front on the road. So the boats are stored there. And we have to start paying some rent on that building now. We're gonna pay $1,000 a year. So the rec department and the high school will split that cost. And then since these boats have been bought, there's never been any repairs done to the boats, and they're banged up. It's fiberglass work that needs to be done from hitting the docks or hitting each other. So the rec department is getting an estimate on that. He does not have the estimate yet. And the work can't be done in this weather, so it might not be done until after sailing season, but we did agree to split the cost on that as well. We've worked really well with the rec department. We know that, you know, their programs of the summer are our future sailors. So, you know, we have a close relationship. I speak with Kevin Devon pretty much on a daily basis, and Nick probably once a week. You know, we do so many things back and forth that, you know, we just have a good relationship. There's great communication.
And when we met with Nick, he was so supportive. He was really good, and whatever you need, and we'll work together. And it was a really good relationship. It's the first time I've seen it. I'm the new principal, so it's the first time I'd seen it. But the relationship between the rec department and Scott Payne, the athletic department, is really, really positive. It was really nice to see.
One of the other issues that was, not issues, but brought up was transportation. They're gonna be going to some different places that they typically haven't gone. Like if we just go to Hingham, it's not a big deal, but if they're going into Charlestown now, we can't have the kids driving. They will provide transportation for that. And then I know one of the other, it's not an issue, it's like an identity thing. Is it a club or is it a sport, sailing? And the MIA does not recognize sailing as a sport, and that's our governing body. So that's why we give the kids letters and we give them pins and whatnot, but it's just no other schools call it a sport either. They all call it a club. So, I mean, honestly, to me, it doesn't matter if it's called a sport or a club. I don't know if you guys have any particular feeling one way or the other about that.
The tricky thing is with the MIA doesn't recognize it that way, so, but we do follow through with certificates and all the same exact thing that the varsity programs would have.
Well, we really appreciate you clearing that up for us and just sort of digging into it and all that you do in general with high school athletics and everything. It's a huge, and obviously for the student reps tonight, very thriving, full set of sports and an array of opportunity for students. So
Aren't those
amazing.
two awesome? Those
Yeah.
two students are awesome.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So we appreciate both of you and athletics and everything, all the boosters, everybody that goes into making those programs successful and continue to be successful even in this fall season. So much appreciated.
I just shared a note with Bill and Mark, a person from Norwell that attended the soccer game on Saturday. He walks with a cane. He's got a bad knee. He's an elderly gentleman. He used to be a bus driver. And this is a shutout to shore. He kept going up to get pizza and they kept running out. They kept saying, more's coming, more's coming. So finally the woman said, this poor guy, he's come here like 5 times. We haven't had it. I'm gonna go find him in the stands.
And they delivered
She
it.
went and found him in the
Yeah.
stands, delivered his pizza and
And
gave him
delivered it.
free chocolate chip cookie. He posted it on social media. So, you know, when even the people that aren't directly involved with the actual events, you know, the games, but are involved in the events, when they act like that, it just goes a long way for us.
I mean, I was sitting in the, outside of the track waiting for my pizza, so I kept looking at it, they were bringing them to us, but I didn't get anything, nothing. Not a cookie, nothing.
Thanks for clarifying some of these issues. Just I have a question relative to your mention of the weekend activities. Can you explain a little bit about how that took place, how Scituate was able to host the state championship soccer games?
Sure. So as many of you know, I'm the tournament director for football and ice hockey. So at the start of the season, I'll reach out to every school in the state to to find out if they're interested in being a neutral site when we get to those rounds. So people volunteer their sites. I was asked about soccer. We weren't originally a site, but then when the Pembroke Norwell matchup came out and the Norwell Hanover matchup came out, they did reach out and ask if we would be willing to host. And then it also made sense for Monomoy and Linfield because it was kind of right smack in the middle. So I actually reached out to the rec department to see if our field was open because I was going to bump, you know, if youth football had playoffs and whatnot. The fields were open the whole day, so we played the 3 games. I know one of the women from Shore came to me in the middle of the 3rd game and said, "We don't have a single thing left.
Wow.
It
We
was
sold
locked.
everything."
Yeah.
They sure did really well.
Yeah.
So Shore's able to staff
Yes.
the snack bar, then they just generate the revenue from that.
And then the MIA writes us a check. We pay our expenses out of it, and usually for the 3 soccer games, we'll probably net about $4,000.
Wow. That's great.
So it's
Thank you for pointing
it's
that.
profitable to.
Yeah, I think now with our facilities, we've never had the opportunity to do things like that. I'm assuming that's why, main reason why they decided to do it, but no, I appreciate it. It's
Yeah, so
great.
you hosted 5 soccer games in total.
And you get great feedback on the facilities. You get so many parents who comment on the fields and how well they're kept, and you get really good feedback on it.
We travel to, you know, when we play, we can travel to places and use their facilities as well, so just reciprocated.
I have a question about the sailing and when Scott was here a couple of meetings ago, he mentioned other towns that are having the same difficulty. And has there been ever any discussion about maybe like joining, you know, like, cause the girls hockey did that, correct?
So I'm talking with Hanover right now.
Okay.
They believe they have 3 people that would be interested in sailing, and last year we were 1 under the number that you really need. So if we could just grab one other town and pick up a few kids, that would help.
Yeah, that's great. And this is great, and I know you know, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the background that people don't hear about, so this is really good as an update. The only thing I have to say though is I would be wary of, you know, saying you can transport people, because I just know from experience with kids who did sports that transportation is always an issue,
Well, it's a significant issue now with
All
lack of
over.
bus drivers.
not just in Scituate.
Yeah. We have to reach out to First Student and Ingalls and Topman and whatnot, and so a lot of times they can't help us out either.
Yeah.
We did have to drive to several events this fall.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. We need to say maybe.
It wasn't in Annapolis Valley, it said Salem Capital.
Yeah.
And Newport, so.
Yeah.
And they still got scholarships. to
Can I just show you guys this?
Yeah.
I saw that
So
online.
Oh,
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's a sailor on a clipper ship riding a green wave. So our assistant boys hockey coach works for Arrow Hockey. He designed the logo.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Very nice. Got all the colors in there too, I see. All right, elementary school improvement plans. Our 4 elementary principals.
Go all the way over here.
You can take one mic.
Yeah, you might want to put 1 mic, just 2 and 2. Thanks.
Yes, hi, this is Maria.
Listening to your voice now.
Okay, can you hear me? So thank you for having us. We, the 4 principals in elementary, have worked diligently on our school improvement plans, which started this year. So we all had to rewrite our plans. They are 2-year plans, and that's what we've done. And I think you have a copy of each plan. Tonight, we're just gonna do an overview. We did work together, but we tried very hard also to keep the culture of each school within the plans. So we're gonna do kind of that 30,000 foot view And then if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those. So why do we have a school improvement plan? We are, in these plans, we've identified academic and social emotional learning priority goals. We are making sure that our plans are aligned with the district goals and specifically with the, thank you, I'm sorry, brain freeze, with the new strategic plan. And that we have consistent practices across all 4 elementaries. And then, of course, we're also looking at our school culture. So this is a list of all of our school council members. Each school has staff, parent representation, and a community rep, except for Wampatuck. I've tried very hard to get a community rep and have not had success with that. But I will keep trying. So that's the only difference in the Wampatuck school council. So we looked at together our MCAS student growth percentiles. We looked at all of our beginning of the year data in ELA and math. We looked at our holistic student assessment, which is our social emotional assessment. And then we looked at chronic absenteeism. And given all that data across all 4 schools, that is what we used, or one of the things that we used to help inform the 2 goals in each of our school improvement plans.
Good evening, Scott Williams Cushing. It's a pleasure to present this evening. I'll be focused on the next 2 slides, English, language arts, student MCAS growth, and math. As you can see from this slide, we're presenting data for 2019, 2022, and 2023. We do want to give special recognition and thanks to all of our teachers, our curriculum specialists. This truly was a team effort. I think I can speak for my colleagues when I say that it really was a collaborative effort, and our teachers deserve huge kudos for the hard work that they've invested in our students. Also, our parent partnerships are very important in this endeavor as well. This reflects our strategic plan objective 1, teaching, leading, and learning. This also reflects our elementary school improvement plan goal 1. By June of 2025, all learners will reach their unique potential by showing typical to high growth on state and district assessments. So as you can see from this bar graph, all 4 of the elementary schools fall into the typical growth or high growth categories. And we are a high performing district. We're very proud of that, but we are first to acknowledge there's always work to be done. We can't rest on our accolades and our achievements. So we're constantly revisiting our data as we progress monitor with our students throughout the year. As we know, MCAS is our public report card that we must respond to. So this slide captures the literacy growth for the past 19, 22, 23. If we advance to math, very similar patterns here. Again, the 3 years, 2019, 2022, 23. This reflects the strategic plan objective, the first objective of our 5-year our strategic plan for the 5-year plan, and also reflects our goal 1, emphasis on our typical and high growth on state and district assessments. And again, as you can see, all 4 of our elementary schools fall into the typical or high growth category. I'm not bitter that Cushing only missed it by 1/10 of a point, but congratulations to all the schools who performed very well.
That might be the battery.
Yes, just use that one. Just use the one.
There's people at home can't hear you.
Yeah, use the mic.
Okay.
And I'm gonna hand it off to Principal Sheehan.
As Tracy mentioned, when developing our school improvement plans, we also take a look at our ELA and math benchmarks. This slide shows a comparison between fall 2022 and fall 2023 for our ELA benchmarks. For kindergarten and grade 1, that represents our DIBELS data. For grades 2 through 5, that is our STAR reading data. This data shows that there is improvement in the percentage of students who are exceeding expectations and a decrease in the amount of students or percentage of students who are at risk. On our next slide, this graph for math represents the universal screener for number sense for kindergarten and grade 1. Grade 2, this data is based on our STAR math data, which is new for us this year. In kindergarten through grade 5, over 70% of students met or exceeded their benchmarks. And it is also worth noting that in kindergarten through grade 2, less than 1% of students are at risk. Our next slide then shows a comparison between fall 2022 and fall 2023, only on the universal screener from grades K through 5. In K through 5, it shows that we have been making improvements for each grade, that each year students are showing up more prepared. Those that have the star on it is showing grade 1 students in fall 2022. Those students are now grade 2. So you can see that the amount of students meeting is 95%, and that has grown, and the amount of students at risk is decreasing. All of this shows, for those previous slides, that we are really making improvements through our WIN groups and making sure that we are trying to reach all students, and we will continue to do that. This particular slide is another benchmark that we do in the fall. The holistic student assessment, or the PAIR survey, is given to students in grades 3 through 5 each fall. And the PAIR survey really looks at the strengths and challenges for social and emotional learning for all students. Of particular focus over the last few years has been student belonging, which is one of the leaves on the clover that you see up in the right-hand side. And school bonding is a major element of that bonding clover leaf. School bonding was the top strength listed for students in grades 3 and 4, and came in number 2 for grade 5. This really speaks to the efforts that we have been making through PBIS and multi-tiered supports for students to make sure that they're feeling that they belong in school. While this is encouraging, we also recognize that there's still a small number of students who report this as a challenge, and we will continue to put our efforts and focus in this area.
Hi, I'm Mary Oldak, principal at Jenkins Elementary. And our final area of data that we were looking at, which is a very high priority for both Scituate and the state, is chronic absenteeism data. So to look at this across all 4 elementary schools, we looked at the average across all 4 schools, and for all students, we had a chronic absenteeism of 9%. Chronic absenteeism is when, for grades 1 through 5 only, when a student is missing 10% or more of their days in membership. And that is interesting because it also includes not only excused but unexcused absences. So if a child's not in school, it counts towards this. And we looked at our high needs subgroup and how that compared, how chronic absenteeism compared to all students. And for our high needs subgroup, chronic absenteeism was 5.4% higher at 14.4%. High needs includes students who are economically disadvantaged, have a disability, or they're English language learners or former English language learners. And economically disadvantaged, a lot of times people think that that just means low income, but it actually is students who whose families access at least one of 4 different state-sponsored programs like SNAP and Medicaid and DCF foster care. So these are, the students who are economically disadvantaged in many ways. So that is the high needs subgroup. And so we said, okay, so we know the chronic absenteeism is higher for high needs. How do we see that play out in achievement? So we looked at this average scale score for all students in both ELA and math and how that compared to high needs. And so for all students, our ELA scaled score and our math scaled score was above 500. That's important because anything above 499 is that the benchmark or the crossover point where students are meeting or exceeding expectations. So what we see with our high needs kids is that it is below that 499 and that there's a difference of about 13%. So chronic absenteeism, we know that kids need to be here to learn, and with our high needs subgroup, we do see a differential with their MCAS achievement scores also. So that's an area of focus for us. So as we looked at our MCAS data, our beginning of the year screeners, our holistic student assessments, and we just thought about, what does this tell us? What are our high areas for growth or our focus areas for growth? We developed 2 goals, which we'll talk about in a moment, but our focus areas are that we're going to work on increasing our student growth percentiles in MCAS. We've talked about student achievement, if they're meeting or exceeding, but student growth percentiles really show us if a child is growing regardless of where they are. That's what we want to see, is that every child is getting better and receiving the supports they need to do so. So we're going to be focusing on student growth percentiles, decreasing chronic absenteeism because we know that kids need to be in school to learn, and enhancing inclusive opportunities to continue to build that connectedness and sense of belonging. That picture there that you see is an example of inclusive opportunities. That's an all-school assembly at Jenkins Elementary that was just held this past October. There's a young man in a wheelchair holding a very big stuffed yellow lab. And the young man's name is Scotty and the dog's name is Spillway. And they came to our school to talk about Scotty, who has a chromosomal disorder that carries out with a pretty significant developmental delay. He's nonverbal, and how he can do anything. And he has water skied, he horseback rides, and he always has Spillway with him. And so the family has written this very sweet children's book, and it was just a wonderful opportunity for the kids to see someone with those kind of challenges, and the message is you can be anything that you set your mind to, you can accomplish anything. Next slide, please. So as we looked at our focus areas for growth and considered all of the data, we developed 2 goals. The first one, as Scott said earlier, is by June of 2025, all learners will reach their unique potential by showing typical to high growth in district and state assessments. That falls under our strategic plan, objective 1, teaching, learning, and leading. And you'll notice that we did try to use terms from the strategic plan and our goals to really show that connection around the unique potential of all learners.
And I'm going to speak to goal 2. So as Mary stated, for the second goal, we'll really focus on communication, community partnerships. By June of 2025, expand events and opportunities at the elementary schools, celebrating the inclusion of all learners. There are several ways that we attempt to achieve this at our elementary schools. We have school assemblies that reflect our core values, our PBIS community meetings, positive behavior intervention supports. That's what that acronym stands for. Our enrichment programs, we also have to acknowledge our partners with our PTO, because without their support, financial and physical, we would not be able to organize all the wonderful enrichment that we bring to our children at our school. So thank you to our PTOs. We also work very closely and collaborate with Mr. Adams for our This Is Our House assemblies. And then our lit teams, our lit clubs at our schools. Right now, currently, the Cushing lit team meets on Thursdays, and they're focusing on Native Peoples Heritage Month and also Hispanic Heritage Month. So those themes are celebrated and they cycle throughout the calendar year as we move and progress throughout the year. We really want to present a climate where all cultures are celebrated at our elementary schools and inclusive environments. Our community partnerships, we have our Veterans Day celebrations, our partnerships with the Fire and Police of Scituate, our rec departments. Holly Hill Farms has done a wonderful job coming to our schools. Those partnerships give our students authentic hands-on learning and real experiences right in our schools, so that's great. Our food pantries and our shoe drive. And then lastly, we want to increase our cultural celebrations. Specifically, we want to promote membership at our Martin Luther King Day celebration, and our Juneteenth would be another example of enhancing that opportunity for our families and parents in Scituate. And then lastly, I'll just close by saying we have presented to all of our school councils, so they have been informed of our school improvement plan, and we are happy to take and entertain any questions you might have.
Great, thank you all very much for your presentation. Questions from the committee? Say.
I'll start.
I'm happy
I'll
to.
start. I was
Whoever
actually
wants to go
wondering
first.
if, Heidi, if you could bring up the slide with the SGPs on it again. I was just curious, I know the goal is, the number one goal is about SGP, and it was to have all learners be making typical or high growth, but I actually don't know how far we are from that, because I can't tell. Right now, I see all the little bars are in typical or high, so if all students are making typical or high growth, how would we expect those to change? I'm just like trying to think through, like, I don't know that I would know how to know if we achieve that goal.
I can answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mike. So right now, we have individual results that go down from the department to the teacher. So every single child, and you saw this on your own children's scores, they have an individual growth score. So those growth scores are averaged. As of right now, our goal is that these averages would increase, period. With each school, if they're looking at every individual student, could we report it differently and say there's an average of students who are in typical or high growth? They can pull that out at the individual school level, no problem. But this is what I shared at the beginning of the year and what we start with when we share with our school councils.
I think I'm just trying to figure out, like, to me, it looks like we're doing a great job. Most of it, those bars are all in the typical or high. And so I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, like,
but they're the average.
Yes.
So what they were.
We want them all to go up, but I can't. We just all want them to go up. That's the point.
That's the point. That's the point.
I understand
But
that
it's
globally.
an average, right? So when they're looking at it on the school level and when they're with their data teams, they're looking child by child.
Yep.
To make sure that we don't have students who are low growth, low achievement, which is, again, data breakouts that are being done with departments and with individual teachers. And I think Megan and Heather started those meetings with grade levels.
Yeah, so we do work very closely with Megan Gregory and Heather Allen at the elementary level to really fine tune the data points that we're looking at in progress monitoring.
Okay, I think it would just maybe there might be a better way to look at the data that would help us see, like, how many kids are currently not meeting that typical or high growth. Because I still feel like I don't have a great handle on that sense just by looking at this. And I think otherwise I like that idea. I think focusing on growth makes sense. I think, that all looks good. I think I will say when I looked at the plans each individually, I was expecting to see a little bit more differentiation across how you're going to get there, because I think even I know we've made a lot of efforts on getting all the elementary schools on the same page. I just don't want to go too far in that direction, because each of you need different things. Each of your schools are different places on different metrics and different subjects, need different focuses. And so I was looking for a little bit more, I think, in the individual plans to say, like, oh, Cushing sees that, like we saw on science, like they've got to really figure this out. And so Cushing's going to work on that. So I guess that was just one piece of global feedback. I don't know if you have that in a different place, but I feel like it belongs also here, on this document.
I just have a comment on where you started about with the growth and how this is the average, but the goal says all learners will reach their unique potential. So I guess we need to do the deep dive, like Heidi was saying, that each child will show typical to high growth.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
But we can't tell.
Right, yeah.
That's all.
And we won't be able to tell if that's what we see next year. I think that's what Maria's asking.
Yeah,
Right, like just the way, the data visual could be, maybe we could just see where, without identifying a student, seeing where the sort of hotspots are, so to speak. I had a couple of questions. One is a really basic one. I noticed when you shared the school councils, that Hatherley has 1 faculty and 2 parents, and I'm not playing the comparison game, but I'm just curious, is it just hard to find teachers to be on school council and parents as well? Because our I say our because I'm a Hatherley parent, sorry.
Yes, yes.
I see that it's much smaller than the other elementary schools.
It was. We actually did have 1 teacher volunteer, but then we put it out to the parents as well.
Yeah.
And it came back as
Yeah.
All my years of watching these things at home,
my
I'm very
booming-
attuned
my booming
to
voice
the-
wasn't getting over there. So we did have 1 teacher volunteer, so it was for staff, myself, and that teacher, but we did put that out to parents as well.
Yeah.
And we actually only had 2 volunteers.
Okay.
So if they had come back for more, we would have gone back to staff to say we need 1 more. But since we needed an equal number, that's how that ended up.
Okay.
And the principal is considered the staff.
Okay.
There's 2 staff and 2 parents.
Perfect, thank you. So I had a few, I needed some help understanding some of the slides, if you wouldn't mind. So slide 7 is the first one. So we see there's a decreased percentage of students at risk. And I just want to,
I don't know what slide that is.
slide 7, it's ELA beginning of year data. Sorry, I'm looking at the packet. That one, thank you. So decreased percentage of students at risk. So if I look at grade 2 to 3, that's not true, right? Am I reading that correctly?
I believe what they're mentioning there is as entering 2nd graders. So they were not comparing following the same students forward. Does that answer your question?
Following, I'm not sure.
So the way that it's set up, if you look at grade 2, the
Mhm.
first bar
Yep.
is 2022. And then the
Okay.
second bar is fall 2023. So the students entering into 2nd grade are coming in more prepared. So each year they are.
Oh, I see.
And we can see their.
But we
data
can
from
see
the-
from grade 2 to grade 3 that there were, so if those are presumably the same cohort, right? Am I reading that correctly? Then there are more 3rd graders at risk or needing improvement than they were when they were in 2nd grade. Is that not, am I not reading that right?
That was actually one of my questions on a different slide.
It's that, this also appears on the one about the math benchmarks.
Right.
It's just.
I'm just
The
wondering,
math
should we
benchmarks.
be worried about that? Is that, I'm just
Yeah.
making sure I'm interpreting that correctly.
Right. Like if you look at last year's grade 2, fall 2022, are now this year's grade 3, fall 2023. There's a significant decrease in meeting and exceeding benchmarks. So that would make me question the all students came to grade level more prepared. Not that grade significantly decreased in preparedness. So that was kind of my
Okay.
question, so but different slide.
It shows up on the math as well in a couple of slides. I think, I guess what this makes me wonder is just, like, do we feel like we have all that we need to support these kids? And like, when I read the individual school plans, I don't know that I'm seeing enough. Like I see win blocks, that's a great strategy, we've been doing that. But other than that and continuing to implement the curriculum, the My Way and the ST Math, I feel like I'm just missing some meat from the plans.
The other question was the chronic absenteeism data slide. I don't know what it is on yours, Heidi. Number 11 is what it's on mine. So I just want to make sure. So the first row is percentages, but row 2 and 3. So like, that's differences, not percentages, right? Like the 13.7 and the 13.8 are not percentages.
Correct.
Okay, because, pardon? I think it's supposed to be 14, not 13.7. That was confusing me, right? No. I just want to make sure, because I saw the percentage at the top there. I just want to make sure that I wasn't interpreting that.
No, it's just the scale score difference.
Got it. Okay, just want to make sure. And then the last goal, and then I'll let my colleagues chime in. I would love to hear more about the choice of events and partnerships, because again, I'm bringing my bias in, as a Hatherley parent who had 3 elementary school kids for a while, I feel like the elementary schools do such an awesome job with partnerships, so many partnerships and events. So I was surprised to see this as a goal, especially given that we've talked about other things like, God, absenteeism seems to be an issue. So I'm just wondering if I would love to hear more about what the thought process was there. I'm happy to talk about that for a moment. So one of the things that we talked about is providing more inclusive opportunities, and I agree with you, but there are many ways that we can create a more inclusive environment in our schools. And by inclusive, I'm meaning not just accessible, but fully inclusive. And I agree that we do have a lot of that happening, but we can be better at that. One of the places specifically we were talking about is in our district-wide cultural celebrations, like Scott mentioned, the MLK celebration and the Juneteenth. There's very little participation from the elementary schools in those events. And some of the feedback we received at our school councils is that they just don't know about it, and they're not sure where their role is as elementary families, where they can fit into that. So we also talked a lot about like what events do we already have happening, and how can we bring the participation up, and also just look at those events and make them more inclusive. I'll give you a quick example of our it's specific to Wampatuck, but we have the garden at Wampatuck and we have Holly Hill Farm. We all have Holly Hill Farm that comes, right, and they're amazing. Our garden is not accessible. It's not fully accessible to kids with mobility issues or even visual impairments. So we've been looking, so we have this great community partnership with Holly Hill, but we don't have a space that's fully inclusive for everybody. So instead of sort of recreating the wheel, we talked about looking at that partnership and how can we make that so that that space is fully inclusive of everybody. So you used some examples. I wonder, is this also thinking about, like today is transgender remembrance? So is that something that you would think about, or like in June with Pride? Like, are you also thinking yes beyond sort of? Definitely. Okay. And I'll tell you that conversation came up within the Wampatuck School Council, right? And those are some tricky areas still, but yes, that's what we mean, like fully inclusive. So anybody who comes into an event, whether it be a neurodiverse challenge or pride and transgenders, we want everybody to feel fully inclusive and walk into our building and feel like they belong and they're accepted. And we also talked a lot about, again, not trying to recreate the wheel or necessarily make new events, although we're certainly open to that, but taking the events that we already have through our PTOs and through our schools and really looking at them with a different lens. You said tricky. What's tricky in what way?
Just like trying to just get parents and everybody comfortable with using those words and talking about our transgender community, right? But we definitely are having those conversations, and we did during our school councils.
And if I could just add, I think I agree with what Principal Reardon stated. I think we do have great partnerships at the elementary level. I think we really want to fine tune it, and we want our students to be represented in how we operate our schools, that they have a voice, that they are represented, that they are part of the fabric of the community. Does that sound accurate? I think we have a good foundation in place, but I think we could do a better job of possibly reaching those populations.
I have a question on the chronic absenteeism. I think in the individual school plans, it's in 2 out of the 4, I think. Now, forgive me if I'm not exactly, it might be 3 out of 4 or something, but it's definitely not in all of them. And I was curious if that was because you're feeling like attendance is not necessarily an equal problem across all the schools. And if, I was also like, that's another example, I think, where what's in the plan, I think it says something about, increasing proactive communication with families, things like that. But I guess I'm just feeling, well, no, maybe this is not, sorry, I'll stick with my original question, which was just, do you feel like the chronic absenteeism is a problem across all the schools? And if not, I don't think it's in all the plans.
I thought we talked about that, I don't know which ones, it's in Wampatuck, so I can see that.
Yeah.
I'll speak for Wampatuck, it's definitely an issue at Wampatuck, and so much so that I even met with Assistant Superintendent Driscoll and our registrar, because I actually thought there could possibly be an error in the numbers. In fact, there is not. So, you know, one of the things we noticed too is if you dig deep into it, we have chronic absenteeism, but if like Mary showed on the slide there, our high needs groups, right? That's where a lot of the chronic absenteeism is. And so that's where you see that achievement gap. So I think for us, we want to target sort of those groups, looking closely at their absenteeism, because those are our students who need a lot of support, but it's appearing like they're just not in school as much as our all students. So if you pull that group out, I would say that is the case at all 4 schools, that group specifically needs support in that area. The proactive communication with caregivers is really just like working with families, right? At elementary school, it's up to the families to get them to school. So you really got to work with the families to get that importance of why you need to be at school every single day.
I think what I was wondering, or what I was looking for, was like when I saw the slide about the high needs and the chronic absenteeism and the MCAS correlations and all that, I guess like what I would think would then come up in a plan would be exactly what you just said, like identify the target, group of families that we definitely need to work with, and like plan, I think I just was looking for like a slightly more in-depth description of like what the plan is, because I feel like otherwise we just run the risk of this is lumped in with like 6 other things underneath goal number 1, and I feel like we just run the risk of it sort of falling by the wayside if it's just proactive communication. Like I agree, that totally matters, but I feel like what you just verbally said makes a lot more sense to me than like just what I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback, because again, like we've been living these plans for a long time. So it makes a lot of sense to us. We've also had a lot of conversations with our school councils, amongst each other, with our staff. So I understand what you're saying. I will assure you that chronic absenteeism is at the top of our conversations right now, to really, and not just here at Scituate, like Mary had said, in the state, it is a priority. And again, just working with families to help get them to understand the whole excused and unexcused, right? You're just not in school, Sure.
Just, thinking about how to flush out kind of all the details underneath that in the school improvement plan around supporting families with resources. What comes to mind for me is connecting families with supports in the community, that will help them get their kids to school. Like, for example, I sometimes see some of our Boston students don't come to school when maybe they could have, but the parents don't want to run the risk of having to come pick their child up because of the distance. And how can we support the families with that? We've had, conversations about Uber gift cards, for example, and how to connect them with community resources to better assist the families in what really is the underlying issue with chronic absenteeism, with certain families and what they're going through.
That makes sense.
Just a question about sort of school councils and their input, collaboration on these plans in general, just with the work that we've done. And I feel proud that we've kind of revamped our policy on school councils and really took a deep dive in that and trying to bring them up to par, I guess you could say. So what was the feedback from your parent and community folks that joined this year and some of them are newly elected, like, do they feel that, what was the conversation like? Were these goals something that was really sort of celebrated and, you know, what parents were looking for in community?
I'll tell you what it was like in Jenkins. So we all had, the four of us had gotten together and developed kind of a template of what the goals might be. And I presented those to the Jenkins School Council. And in the previous school improvement plan, there were more almost like physical enhancements to the school and volunteer opportunities and that sort of thing. So this was a little bit more of a turn toward the academic side for the council. And then what we did was we took all the action steps that we had developed as the principles and then added on action steps that were Jenkins specific to think about the areas that we wanted to improve specifically for our school that still fell within that goal. And, you know, I think Tracy said we developed this so that we had a common alignment, but we still kept the culture of our own schools and communities.
I just had one follow-up. I think it was similar to what Maria was talking about. I would just ask, I mean, I've loved the conversation and the back and forth, like hearing more of the stories and the ideas. And I would just ask that for the this goal, the second goal on expanding community events where it has evidence, most of the evidence is around racial diversity, which 100% support. And given what we've just talked about tonight, I would just ask that those specific things around like making the gardens accessible, thinking about Transgender Remembrance Day, I would love to name those as evidence because, to be honest, I'm gonna forget when we get to the end of the year what the accountability was, and it would just be great to name and be intentional just about a couple so that we get those on the list. So that would just be my request, please.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Carrie on that as well. Because I love events. I've been to most of these, every single event that you all noted multiple times, and I think they're fantastic. And I think it was Carrie as well who had mentioned these are, you know, these are sort of the culture of our schools, and they're already really embedded in these are what we're already doing well. So I'm kind of like looking for where we're going to improve. I do understand sort of the cultural awareness and depth in that piece. I'm just cautioning about relying on lots of external folks to sort of hit that, like parents and PTOs and, you know, the fire department. Like I understand where you're going with it now that we have kind of like the deeper explanations. Just like want to see how it connects to student achievement, MTSS, just sort of all of that connection piece together in addition to what we're already doing. Yeah, agree with what my colleagues have mentioned tonight.
I just have one more question. I guess I'm just trying to think about my main challenge with this might just be also the document itself. I'm curious, is this a DESI like template or a template from somewhere? Because I'm just thinking like, I guess what I was looking for, to me, this feels like a lot of very small things. Some of them are like, you know, we're gonna have these weekly meetings, or we're gonna administer the peer assessment, or we're gonna, you know, have these events. To me, those just feel like check the box, you did it or you didn't, outcome driven stuff that I'm not always sure how they lead up to the big goal. And I feel like perhaps the form is limiting, or perhaps the idea that there are only 2 goals and they have to be the same across the schools is limiting. And I feel like the conversations we've had has been really enlightening. And it's just a big contrast to what I see sort of listed on this little table, which I know is not a lot of space. And I know it's like one of many things that you're doing. So I understand that, but I feel like when you guys are explaining, I'm able to really understand a lot better than just what I'm seeing on here. So maybe that's just a limitation of the format, and maybe we can think about changing that up in the future. But I think that's been my kind of like global reaction. It's hard to know. But like the explanations and ideas you had about attendance, to me, I'm like, yes, those are the things. Let's try those things, you know? And I'm not always seeing those types of things reflected. I think that's gonna be a challenge.
Anything else anyone would like to add? We proceed. Okay.
Do these. Voting. Right. I make a motion that the school committee approve the 2023-2024 Pushing School Improvement Plan as presented.
We have to vote on each one individually. We're comfortable voting on them.
Oh, I'll second. Second.
Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm sorry.
It's okay,
Can I ask a
discussion time.
process question? If we were to not vote on these tonight, what would happen next? I don't know. Like, I am wary of making anyone go and do extra work, but I also feel like maybe it wouldn't be that hard to add a little bit more detail and like add some differentiation to them. But I also am wary of like, are we asking then our colleagues to come represent all of this to us? Like, I don't know what the process is.
Fair question.
So I'll just, this may not be the process, but I've been in situations where we've had to approve like an oral exam for a doctoral thing. And there's a conditional where we verbally have talked about changes and we trust our colleagues to do the work. And if they have questions and clarify, they could reach out to us. So given that we're saying that, I feel like we could vote to approve with the understanding that they're gonna go back and make the changes that we all talked about, right? Which is just sort of adding evidence and clarifying some things. I mean, I think it's an iterative process that I was on the hot seat last school committee, so.
Right. So you can make the motion, someone can make the motion with
Do you wanna do that?
Yes.
Why don't you do that?
however you want to make the motion.
Yeah.
With whatever additives or.
Does that make sense or
Yeah, no,
not to
that's-
complicate?
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
feel like we're
like-
not 100% comfortable.
No, but I feel like I also
with
wanna
this
like be
presented by
respectful and
somebody.
trusting our expert colleagues here to do what we have, right? Like what we talked about.
Okay. So the motion is, so I would then make a motion,
Well, do you
or
wanna,
do we close that first? Close out yours.
no, that's
amend.
fine. I did,
Amend the motion, that's right.
okay, why don't you do that?
So you can.
Okay, so I will amend the motion to recommend that the school committee approve the 2023-2024 Cushing School Improvement Plan with additional changes as discussed.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You'll have to do it every other time.
Okay, I will make a motion that the school committee approve the 2023-2024 Hatherley School Improvement Plan with additional details as discussed.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I will make a motion that the school committee approve the 2023-2024 Jenkins School Improvement Plan with additional details as discussed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I make a motion that the school committee approve the 2023-2024 Wampatuck School Improvement Plan with additional details added as discussed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Can I just say one thing? I don't know if it matters, but it's the 2023-2025 because they are two-year plans.
Oh.
You said
Oh, it's
2020.
written, that's because we have, right,
Okay,
that's,
okay,
I'm
fine.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
no, you're right,
Do we need to remake all of those motions?
Jean?
Can we just amend each motion to change the year?
Change it in the word and in the minutes to.
You can
Well,
probably
no,
just
we
what,
voted
say,
on years.
just put them all together and make it
Okay,
just a.
I make a
for the
motion
record.
to amend the motions about the school improvement plans
Yes.
from 2023, 2024 to 2023, 2025 school years on Cushing, Hatherley, Jenkins, and Wampatuck.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for correcting us.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
yes, thank you.
All right, great. Okay. Oh, school committee goals.
Only take a second, just the first one. And then I only changed the first one based on our discussion last week or 2 weeks ago.
All right.
You only changed it.
Yes.
They're the same as
Be correct.
Okay.
No, they're same as when I presented them the first time. No one gave me any feedback to it was just the first one.
So the document.
Here we go.
Is the SC goals revised.
Here you go.
The only one I changed was the first one because we don't have the ability to track and monitor the data ourselves. So I changed it to just say in partnership with district leadership to continually review and discuss, because that's what we can do, right?
Okay.
We can review that with them and we can discuss it, and our leadership is great in that if we ask for data or have additional questions with data that's not presented, they will share it with us at a subsequent meeting.
That makes sense.
And on the topic of our goals, they're always annual.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. They're supposed to be, yes.
And at what point in the year do we revisit them?
The end.
Yeah.
It's sort of the accountability piece of,
So like in
which
June?
Carrie did last. Last.
I actually did that when I presented them. I tried to present evidence of how we did on last year's goals, but we could certainly do that earlier. Like we actually could have done those first couple of slides in June and then revise the goals like beginning of September. Instead, I just did it all.
Technically, we could almost do it on the heels of superintendent evaluation, because then we'll have evidence to support whether or not that's fair. By June, we sort of know whether we, hit the goal or not, considering students won't be in school
We could just use those.
July and August anyway.
Yep, okay.
So we could definitely do sort of like a June
Goal recap.
goal recap, and then, separate it from new goals for 24, 25,
Yeah.
or,
That would be easier.
all right, I'll take a motion on school committee goals for 2023, 2024. If anyone has any other questions or, no?
I'll make a motion that the school committee approve our 2023, 2024 goals as written.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Poor Tom had to wait.
So sorry, Dr.
He
Rab.
had to wait at capital planning and now he has to wait tonight.
You have the floor.
I need somebody to take that down.
Oh, can you take
Oh,
that down?
my apologies.
So while we're waiting for Mrs. Driscoll to put up the presentation, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Mrs. Seesaw in our office. She went through 5 or 6 drafts with me on this, and it was wonderful. And at the very end, when I said I really wanted to be blue, she handed me a box of crayons and said, you can just color it in if you feel that strongly about it. So she was wonderful, and it's been great working together and putting the first quarter report together. So as the committee's aware, I've been evaluating the budget since I began in July. And as I look at this report, everything is trending in the direction that we'd expect. We still have 74% of our budget remaining. We've spent 26% of it, which in mid-November is about what we'd expect to see. In terms of the format, I wanted to spend a little bit of time before we talk about specific numbers, just looking at the format of the report, because I think it's a little bit different than you may have seen in the past, and I wanted to go over it. So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has a format for presenting budgets, and it's broken into 5 different categories. The first one, the 1000s, are administration. That's all the administrators. Instruction, which is the primary category, is the 2000s, and that's the salaries of all the principals, department heads, teachers, and all of our expenses, equipment, books, and supplies. 3000 is student services, which includes nursing and transportation, athletics, and the student clubs and activities. 4,000s are custodial and maintenance, utilities, gas and electric, and the 9,000s are out-of-district tuitions. And as we look at the budget, not only in FY24, but as we continue to look at FY25, I'm going to present in the same way so that we start seeing the same categories the same way. And even broken down into those, you can see the first one there, the total of, 1110 school committee, 1210 superintendent. Those are categories from the Department of Education. And they help us organize the budget. Mrs. Driscoll, if you could go to the last page of the presentation real quick. Thank you. So you'll see at the bottom there, the total appropriation of $45.7 million. That's our operating budget. That was what was approved at town meeting. And we also know that our budget is supported by an additional $3.5 million of grants and revolving as well. So that's not reported here. This is simply the operating budget. I'm still working on looking at all the grants and revolving and exactly figuring out where we are with those, and I'll be reporting those at a later time. I looked into our salary obligations just to get a sense of that $33.8 million remaining, what was needed to cover salaries for the rest of the year. And right now that's about $30.7 million. So we have $3 million unencumbered at this point in the school year, which again is what I'd expect to see, especially going into a cold winter. I'm happy to see that available to us. And we continue to spend as the budget was approved. The negatives, so we can go back to the first page again, I apologize for jumping around. The negatives in the budget are simply areas that were approved or things that have changed, contracts that were approved after the budget was voted. So not only the school committee votes in March, but town meeting votes in May, photocopier contracts, different contracts like that are settled over the summer. And I tried to make those true in the budget. And we'll be looking at ways down the road of transferring and truing those up. But basically, that's the first quarter. It's as of November 15th. Technically, the first quarter is September 30th, but I just figured it was a little bit more honest to show it as of November 15th. And right now, everything is really trending the way I would expect at this point in the school year. So I'm happy to address any individual lines or any individual areas. The one thing I will say on the bottom of this page, if you go down a little bit, Mrs. Driscoll, you'll see where there's a negative in technology there for Chromebooks. Those are paid by our E-rate program, and that negative actually has already been cleared out within the time that we have written this report, and today we have that commitment from E-rate. So that's no longer there. The money has been recovered in the budget. So this is changing every day. If I were to run it today, it would be a little different than I ran it yesterday. But November 15th gives us a very good snapshot.
I just want to say thank you. This is very, very helpful. And I just think it's really nice to have this update and to understand where we are periodically throughout the year. It's very clear. I like the format. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's nice to see that we're just right on target. I remember in years past, it was, you get to a certain point and like, all right, no more spending. But it seems like we're not headed, barring any, I don't want to spoil anything.
Understood.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah.
So is it on? Yeah, they're good. So if we hire or the district hires consultants or contractors, does that person's salary go in the category to which they would be doing the work, like applied to the, so if it was like IT, it would be, we'd see it in IT. If it was HR, it would go in HR, or communications, it would go. Is that how it would work?
Typically, yes.
Okay.
So most of the consultants are central administration contract services.
Okay.
So that's kind of a broad catch-all for our consultants.
Okay.
If it is specific to IT or a certain area, there is a contractor service line.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, no, thank you very much for this. I think historically we haven't always seen it, well, we've never seen it at this level of detail, so I appreciate it. I don't know how, I know Cindy was probably working very diligently on it, so I appreciate it. Not sure how easy or difficult it is to create this. I'm sure it's not that simple. But I think it's great. I think that, yeah, it's just part of our job as a committee to make sure that if there is some budget issue that we're just aware of it. So if we take your reporting, which again, we've never really seen this level of detail, and to show that we're right on target is good. Makes me feel good about it. So, but I just be curious, like, does this take an inordinate amount of time to create a document like this?
No, I asked Mrs. C, so it took her about 2 hours to put together, which she was grateful for. It was okay.
But going forward, it might be slightly more efficient once we come up with a format that is agreeable.
Absolutely, yes. After she and I did this together, moving forward, we'll be able to use the same format now, and that'll make it easier.
Yeah. I think it's great. I think I would just say that I think that you did is just to highlight those. I mean, it's great to see line item by line item, but if there's just like, one particular number, I guess, that where we're really over budget or under budget, that I'm not sure at some point it might get identifiable in terms of if we're over budget, we might not want to show this level of detail, but but no, I think this is helpful, again, just highlighting where we're over budget, under budget, but the net number at the bottom is really what we ultimately are concerned with.
Absolutely, and I think down the road, I don't mean to interrupt it, down the road, we'll be looking at possibly doing some transfers among these cost centers. So that was the other reason I wanted the committee to be aware of it, because we can, during the year, transfer among cost centers as long as we don't go over the bottom line. So we may do that.
And when you say cost, this come up in just a general conversation. When you say cost center, it's like from 1,000 to 2,000. Is that a cost center?
Broadly defined, more specifically 2110, 202120, each of those categories.
So every bucket.
The bold areas
is a different one.
Would be cost centers.
Is a cost center, okay. And you have the liberty to move money between those cost centers?
Yes.
Okay, great.
With the committee approval, yes.
Excellent, thank you.
I was just wondering, I've never seen the school committee budget like this. What is the teachers' professional something, the 87K?
Sure, that's a reimbursement that they have contractually for courses that they take during the year.
So teacher professional
So it's teacher professional development.
And why does that fall under school committee?
That's a good question. I'm kind of digging into that myself. There's a couple of areas as I've gone through the budget where decisions have been made, and for consistency's sake, it's important to keep them there. We may talk down the road about moving some of those categories to other places. But when you do that, it introduces a little change, so I want to be slow and deliberate.
No, I know that.
But it does say
It's always been a question. It's always been a comment.
Looks like the school committee has a huge budget, which we don't. Is there another line that's also teacher professional development? Or is this
No,
the
it's
whole
all
line?
lumped together.
That's very strange.
Why it's there, I don't have a clear answer.
Yeah, no, I know it's always.
It does say.
I know it's always
teachers
been there,
cost.
but we never really.
Even some of those, even some of those titles, I'm looking at changing a little bit too, just to make it a little clearer.
Thank you, Tom. I just want to commend Tom. He's a true pro, and you can see the organization when we meet weekly, daily, but formerly weekly to go over this. Well, yeah, way too much for me tonight. So today, but the level of detail and organization, I think Dr. Dutch did an amazing job cleaning up a lot. And I think you remember during the budget season, he'd move stuff and he just wasn't quite finished. And I think Tom's come in and picked the ball up. And so what you'll see during budget season, because it'd be inappropriate probably at this time to start changing things because the numbers wouldn't jive completely. But like Ms. Fenwick picked up, Tom's picking up some of that too that we haven't completely finished, tidied up yet. I think you can see with this level of detail, we'll do that. And it'll read very clean like this and very easy to understand. And what I also think he does a nice job of is educates folks that this might not be their, second language, school budgets or any kind of budget. So hopefully it's more user friendly.
One question. Tom, I'm not sure if it's probably too much information, but the very bottom, it shows the percentage of 74, whatever. Is it silly to put that by cost center too? Or is that kind of redundant? But it's just, I don't know if it's helpful or not. Maybe if there's an issue where we're over under significantly come through. I don't really know if it helps, but just something I thought of.
Sure, let me look into it and see.
It probably doesn't help, but just.
Well, it's in the red,
Yeah, but you don't know like the percentage, like it's $1,000 over and the budget's big, it's insignificant, right? I don't really know what's most helpful, but the bottom number is the most helpful. I just didn't know if putting a percentage in there is gonna make it more confusing or simplify it, but just a comment.
Thank you.
My only question is there anything in here, looking at this, that you are particularly have your eyes on and something that you're sort of watching closely that you want us to be aware of? Whether it's sort of outside forces, statewide, just any, like you mentioned, heating costs and things like so.
So right now, I guess that's really what's on my mind as I'm new to Scituate and getting an understanding of the gas and electric and just kind of the usage, particularly going into the winter. So at the beginning of the school year, I was looking at maintenance needs on the schools, and little things would come up here and there, and I was okay about getting those done. Now I want to take a look and say, okay, let's see, what can we do right now, and what maybe can wait till April, till after the winter, just so that I can get a sense of how the winter is going. So if anything's really on my mind, it's that.
That's great, thank you. Thing that comes to mind is all that transportation per AD pay, and like just that is always such a volatile situation with bus drivers and availability and all those costs.
Absolutely, and we do have one bus that we're contracting with First Student, so that was an additional cost, but that's offset by the user fees that we're getting in transportation, so that's helpful.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly watching.
No, this is great.
Yeah. Appreciate it, thank you. All right, subcommittee update with the file JH, student absences and excuses. Again, I'm doing something like 100 times.
We get to vote
We get
tonight
to
though,
vote.
so.
Practically, I feel versed in this. Anybody else have any questions? I understand that there was a sort of a correction to the backup, which we have in person.
Yeah, we should be
If
looking at the
anyone
hard
needs
copy,
that.
not the one
The hard
that-
copy is, yeah,
in the
more,
file.
most up to date.
Yep.
And it wasn't even major. It was just like a chunk of,
There was like a page
like a
missing.
deletion, yeah. In the original policy. Didn't get copied over. Okay. Anyone have any additional questions for our subcommittee on this? As in Peter or Carrie?
Good, just thanks
Is
for
this
doing
gonna,
this.
is
Yeah,
this going
we
to
appreciate
help
that.
our
Well,
elementary
we'll
schools
see.
Yeah.
meet their
I
goals?
commented to that fact last time.
Yeah.
I think, what we said is when we update the policy, it
Yeah.
gives Ms. Driscoll a reason to revisit it with our building leaders, which gives them then impetus to hopefully like even have the conversation like they had tonight and share ideas that Jenkins, we're gonna do this and blah, blah, blah. And I think that hopefully the idea is that will, then cause a chain reaction where principals are then communicating more with staff and parents and caregivers. But that's, policy has its limits as to what it can do.
Sure.
So I'm not promising this is gonna solve our problems, but I think it is an important step that our policy is accurate and the verbiage is a little bit more clear.
Agreed.
Can I do a motion?
Sure.
Make a motion that the school committee vote to approve policy file JH, student absences and excuses.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Excellent. Approval of minutes. From our November 6th meeting. Anyone have any comments, corrections, or other additions? Except for any abstention. Make a motion on minutes from the 6th.
I'll make a motion to approve the school committee minutes from November 6th?
Yep.
2023.
Second.
All in favor? Abstain. And one abstent, so four yeses and one abstention. All right. Warrants. I do not see anything. Correspondences, nothing of note. That's come in. Other business or future agenda items currently. All right. Take a motion to adjourn if we are set with this meeting.
Motion to adjourn at 7:53.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.